What's up, writers? Today we are going to quickly discuss a nifty little program called Aeon Timeline 2. For those of you who have never been introduced to the program, it is one of the best things for writers, especially those of us who build our own worlds, fantasy, sci-fi, but this is true even for historical fiction writers where they want to keep track of exactly what other events are happening in the world at the same time for context. It's just very useful. So, or even on a smaller scale, if you're writing your own story, sometimes it's just good to be able to keep birthdays in track or how old characters are at any point in any event. That is one of the things I use this for, is to keep track of how old was my character when such and such thing happened, so that I can make sure to get their characterization accurate to their proper age. So, we are going to start doing a very basic current day timeline. You can actually, with Aeon Timeline, build fantasy timelines or, other worlds, but what I mean by that is it's not the Julian calendar. You can make your own custom calendar. As you can see down here, I've got one called Ahold Timeline, and that is actually a calendar that has 16 months, each with 20 days in it, and some very complicated lunar cycles. So I actually managed to build that. It took a lot of time and figuring out, and at some point I will do a tutorial on that, but first we're going to just get you introduced to the cool things that you can do with Aeon Timeline. So we're going to start with fiction. We're not going to customize it because we're keeping it simple. We're going to ignore all the tips because I don't really need those particular ones. So we're going to give it a name. This is just a story that I am working on currently. And we are going to just walk through setting it up in the most basic sense possible. As you can see down here, we've got the years. Up here, we've got the months. If you scroll in real close, I don't normally scroll in this close. No, okay, so it doesn't go down to days. But you can scroll in and out, to the point where you can see centuries or even millennia on one particular screen, which is just very useful if you're doing an entire world history. So there's a couple different things. The two main ones that you are going to use the most are events, which you can see up here, and entities, which are over here. Entities are arcs, which is kind of just a way of organizing things, which we're not really going to touch on today. Places, characters. Events are, as the name suggests, actual events, things that have happened on the calendar. So, for this particular story, we're going to talk about two major characters. One of them's name, wrong button. We're going to add an entity, character. Well, first one's name is Emery. His actual name is Emery Goodwin. And as you can see here, you can add his birth, creation date, as well as later on you can add the death date. So you can actually have it shown when they died or when they were born, which we are going to add in. But we have no events currently, so that makes it kind of difficult. All right. So now we have, if we click on our entities thing, we can see Emery Goodwin. So we are going to add one more entity. I like that word, entity. We're going to add Z, and her last name is Taylor. All right, so now we have our two characters. And I'm going to add one more thing. We're going to add in a place, because why not? And they all live in the general San Francisco area. All right, so now we have our places, we have a location, and we're going to start actually building our timeline. We are going to add an event. In this particular case, Emery is a man who has been looking for his best friend's daughter for years now, and has just never managed to actually track her down. But one day he wanders into the office looking at a job, and there she is, sitting right in front of him. Typical premise for a storyline, right? So we're going to say Emery finds Z. Down here, you can see the start date and the end date. Obviously, this is a localized event. It's not something that goes over the course of days. But let's say we were talking about some kind of extensive holiday, or, these people go on vacation, or, a war. Obviously, you could have a start and an end date then. So we're just going to leave it at this particular date, because it doesn't really matter. As if you look down here, we can see location, San Francisco, participants, Emory, and Z. You can also have observers, which I treat as people who are involved, but not actually active participants in the event itself. They are sort of just involved tangentially, perhaps. So we're going to add that event, and here it goes. It pops right on here. You can still see the date, and you can see all of the information in our inspector over here, which you can open and close at will. You can also do a couple other things where you can add tags to a particular thing. You can do a summary. So Emory finds Z after 6 searching in the ASB offices when he comes to talk to Cooper, which we haven't added, about a job. So this is another one of those things. Oh, right. Okay, there is another person involved in this particular thing. All I got to do is add entity, character, and we can go Michael Cooper. Okay. Now, Michael Cooper is involved. But in this particular case, he is far more tangential than he actually is an active participant in this particular thing. So we're going to go to roles, we're going to go to observers, and we're going to go Michael Cooper. Perfect. You can also add links. Let's say you have like pictures or, articles that you want to link to this event so that you can quickly look back and forth. You add them there. So there we go. You can also add colors if you want to color code your particular scenes, which I tend to do because a lot of my stuff overlaps, but in this particular case, we don't really need it. So here is our lovely event. We're going to add one more storyline event just to keep it interesting. So he finds her on the 29th of January. So we are going to do on the 30th of January. Oops. Yeah, 30th of January. They are going to check out the first stone. I'm not going to explain that because it's a book I'm writing, and if you guys want to know what's happening, you're going to have to check it out when it's available. So in this particular case, we don't really have any observers, but we do have Z and Emory involved. So we are going to add event. And now it's popped down here. It looks like kind of they're happening at the same time, but if we zoom in here a little tighter, you can see they are, specifically showing themselves on the day in which they're happening. So you can zoom in and out to see if you're, doing stuff that covers years or days. All right, so my other favorite part of Aeon Timeline is having birthdays attached to things. Right now, you see it just kind of gives you your name and, nothing particularly exciting. But let's say we have Z. We're going to put her birthday in. So this is 2017. Z is 25 when the story begins. So we're going to subtract 25. Goodness gracious, guys, I can't do math, which I believe is 92. So we are going to add an event in 1992. And we're going to say April 23rd. Why not? That seems like a good birthday. We're going to add a participant, Z. And we are going to say Z is born. Actually, no, we're not going to do that because it actually just makes my OCD twitch. I always mark it as birth of Z Taylor. I don't know why I do it that way, but apparently it is required of me. Add event. All right, so you can see that it took us all the way back here to 1992. But if we zoom out, you can now see all of the different events that are happening so far. All right, so if we go to entities now, and we go to Z, we can go to this birth creation event. And now we can add birth of Z Taylor. We could also do her death if you particularly want it. And you can see here now, when I'm selecting on birth of Z Taylor, she is 0 seconds old. When we click here, she is 24 years, 9 months old. Close enough. Here, 24 months, 9 months old. This allows you to very quickly keep track of ages. And when you have stories that cover years, it is really useful. The other thing that's really useful is just being able to keep your story straight. If you have 2 different storylines going at one time and you want to make sure that they're interlapping at the right moments, this is a great way of keeping track of it. Or if you have 2 books that are supposed to be weaving in and out of each other, again, something really useful. I'm sure you guys are creative and you can think of all sorts of other things you can do with this particular technology, but that's typically what I use it for. At this point, though, I believe we're pretty much done the basics. You can add as many events as you want across history. You can add birthdays for everybody and it'll pop up exactly the same. You can add as far as I can tell, unlimited number of participants. Now, my computer's about to die, but that's all right. You have ridiculous amounts of options when it comes to, whatever sort of look you want. Personally, I like the dark because it just hurts my eyes less than most of the other ones. You can... Oh, that's actually kind of fun. You can change your view mode so that you can look at it like I don't particularly like this calendar particular version, but it is kind of nice to be able to see how old they are in this particular way. And it gives you a more direct timeline of your events without giving you so much space in between. You can also group events. You can do it. Like I said, it is almost impossible to name all of the fun things that you can do with this particular program. But when it's broken down to its smallest pieces, it helps you build a timeline. That's all it does. So I hope that by watching this, you are a little bit more calm about it if you've looked at Aeon Timeline before and kind of just jumped away in horror at the attempt of figuring out how this works. We will do some later tutorials, like I said, on you can actually sync Scrivener and Aeon Timeline together so that your events that are happening in your Scrivener automatically pop into your Aeon Timeline and other awesome things. And we can go over those on a different thing. But so far, but I think that's about all we're going to talk about today. So I hope this helped you storytellers, and I will see you soon.